Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Beyond Day One. I'm David, and I'm so glad that you've joined us as we continue our conversation around professionalism. Last week, we began to introduce to you a definition for professionalism so that we were all on the same page as we began to build out and look at what real professionalism looks like in the workplace. Our definition for professionalism is the consistent demonstration of competence, character, and composure, and how you show up, communicate, and contribute, even when no one's watching. And it's the even when no one's watching part that I think is important because it means that it's a part of what you do and how you do it. And it doesn't matter whether somebody is in the office or out of the office, whether your boss is watching you or not, that you are going to be consistently, constantly the same and dependable and reliable every time, no matter what. This week, we're going to talk about some of the characteristics that build trust, that create professionalism in the environment. We're going to talk a little bit about the currency of reliability and being reliable. We're going to talk about communication. And if we get enough time left, we're going to talk about accountability and attitude. Of course, I'm not going to do that by myself. I've brought some help with me. I've got Phillip with me. I've got Ryan. And now we'll call him, we can't call him the intern anymore. We'll call him our Padawan learner once more. John is with us today. Say hello, everybody.
Hey, hey.
Hello.
So, as we talk about the characteristics that lead to professionalism or that demonstrate and show professionalism, today I want to talk about those three in particular. We're going to get to more as we walk through this bit of a series of conversations. But I want to start by talking about this currency of reliability. And let me tell you, in one sense, every behavior, every action that you spend in the workplace is like a currency. And reliability is an important piece of the puzzle, both when we're developing trust in your professionalism and when we are also seeing the character and shape of who you are. And as we spend those dollars, good things can come from that investment. So, what do we mean when we talk about reliability? That means that we can depend on you to do the things that you say you're going to do, to accomplish your task on time, to be in the meetings and places that you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. No questions asked, usually. And that is such a great thing to have somebody that you can rely on as uh, as a boss. Let me tell you how awesome it is to have people working for you that you can rely on, that you can hand a project to, and you know that that project is going to get done. It makes my job easier, and it makes me look upon that person favorably. And then it even leads to me giving them more, giving them opportunities to grow, to stretch their skills, and to do more because I know that I can depend on them. Remember, reliability builds trust faster than anything that I can think of. When you're reliable and can get it done, your trust happens pretty quickly. When you follow through on the small task, it proves your character. It proves what kind of person that you are in the workplace, and that is a positive. Things like punctuality, preparation, responsiveness when something is given to you. Those are all important pieces of the puzzle. What are some of the behaviors, Philip, Ryan, and John, that make someone instantly reliable in your eyes?
Well, I think one of the best ways to start off if you're trying to build reliability, it is to accomplish even the smallest task with excellence and on time, uh, according to the deadlines, whatever that have been set, and according to the expectations that have been set out for that task.
Mm,
Even if it's not
so
a huge
critical.
task,
So critical.
doing the small things well is a good way right off the bat to increase reliability.
Couldn't
Yeah.
agree more.
And I think being consistent,
Yeah.
there's so in business, there are there are already so many unpredictabilities. So a good manager, a good business owner, anything they can control, they want to. And so not necessarily to say that they're going to control you, but if you can control yourself and be that consistent and improve over and over again, I can hit the deadlines. I'll show up on time. I'm going to pull my weight. If you give me a task, I'm going to do it. If you can be that consistent, that becomes a predictable thing. And so all the unpredictable things out there, which people are very unpredictable, if you can become one of those predictable things, not to be boring or you don't have to lose your what makes you necessarily, but if you can be that consistent person, when I know when I give John a task, he's going to do it and it's going to come back on time and or before that. And so be consistent is what makes you reliable.
Yeah, and Ryan, you said something important there. Regardless of whether the people around you are reliable or not, it doesn't matter. You be who you're supposed to be, and don't be moved by bad behaviors of the people around you.
You'll shine amongst the others.
Yeah, what were you going to say, John?
I was going to add, I think punctuality is often overlooked.
Yes.
When you are punctual and you're on time, even if you're there just 5 minutes before you're supposed to be there, to whatever meeting, to whatever workplace, you're building yourself a lot of, not necessarily reputation, but a sense of reliability, in that you can always depend on a certain person to be there. From speaking from personal experience, in a place where people were not very punctual, have a lot of sketchy schedules that they just didn't feel like showing up on certain days, being there on time and every day given me a lot of grace when I actually couldn't show up on time or had certain emergencies where I got in trouble. So it kind of goes both ways, in the sense that, you'll grant yourself a lot of grace when things happen. But the whole overarching point is that punctuality can be very overlooked, but it can also give you an instant leg up in deeming yourself reliable.
Yeah, that's great, John. Another area where professionalism shows up is, and quite frankly, sometimes breaks down, is when it comes to communication. You'll understand now why it was so important for us to early on begin to deal with communication. If you didn't hear that episode or those episodes around communication, we encourage you to go back and listen to those, because as a Gen Z, as a new manager, as somebody leading the way, if your communication is off, then everything is going to be off. But I want to especially talk about digital communication. You've got to be mindful of your tone in emails, your tone in chats, even your tone in meetings, whether they're virtual or in person. You've got to be mindful to respect people's time, and being concise and clear in your communication. Doesn't matter what your position is. You can't ghost people. You can't, not be clear in what you're communicating and saying to folks, because right now we don't do a lot of communicating verbally in the workplace like we should. We focus on uh, Teams or whatever kind of interoffice, uh, you know, pinger device or whatever tools we're using in the office in order to communicate with one another. And when we're not talking face to face, it leaves a lot of room for guessing and assumption that fills in the blanks of what you meant, what you didn't mean, and all of that stuff. So you have to be very careful when it comes to communication in the workplace. And then you got to know when it's time to pick up the phone or go walk into someone's office versus sending another message. I mean, that's honestly, I would, even in the world that we live in, I would, I would fail. I would caution myself on the side of going and making that visit to the office and peeking my head in the door and saying, "Hey, I just want to run something by you," versus just sending a chat.
Mhm.
Especially if it's something important. You want to know that you're connected and you're on the same page, and that helps your communication. The last segment that I want to talk about is accountability and your attitude. This is so important, man. There's nothing worse than a bad attitude in a workplace. It
Yeah.
just makes things miserable for a lot of people. And one of the areas that particularly falls into place is when it comes to dealing with mistakes and feedback. First
Mhm.
of all, you've got to own your errors and you got to stop making excuses. When you make a mistake, own it. It's yours. You
Yeah.
made that mistake. And if you don't own it, bad things come from that, because then when you start making excuses and saying, well, if the graphics team had done blah, 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 or if accounting had done blah, blah, that then you now not only are you making excuses, but word gets back to those departments and they don't care for you either, which
Mm.
makes it harder for you to get the next thing done with them because they remember how you talked about them.
Yeah.
You've got to respond and not respond with your defenses up. You've got
Mhm.
to put your defenses down and you've got to go in and say, man, I messed this up and I got to figure out how to fix this and fix it quick. And that may mean you have to go to your boss and say, hey, I screwed this up and I need help bailing myself out. And then the other thing you've got to do is when it comes to attitude is maintain your composure under pressure, even when you've made a mistake or something's not going the way you want, or the feedback you just got isn't right. You've got to maintain your composure, your body language, your attitude. Professionalism is felt. Listen to this. It's felt before it's heard.
Mhm.
Professionalism is felt before it's heard. You guys, what's the most professional way to admit that you messed up?
Just be as upfront and clear about it as possible. Don't try to skirt around and hedge,
Mhm.
against what you actually did, because people, we're all adults here. People have BS detectors. They're going to know when you're not telling the full truth. So make sure you're clear and upfront and be thorough with owning that mistake.
Yeah, I think also realizing that um, because it's easy when you make a mistake to get defensive, but if you can come to the revelation that the only attitude that you can control is your own, then I think that'll really help set you free
Yeah.
from becoming defensive and trying to point fingers. Another good way to take a quick temperature of your attitude is, I heard a colleague say this to me once, and if a man walks into a room and one person talks bad about him, it's probably that person that has a problem. But if a man walks into a room and everybody has a problem with him, then you're probably the problem.
Mhm.
That's good, Ryan. How about you, John?
I'll add. I think the other half of accountability is being willing to accept feedback. It's one thing to, yes, acknowledge your mistakes and whatnot. I think that to complete the process of owning up to your mistake, you have to be either a willing to come up with a solution for you to change your behavior, change the way you talk to somebody, or just be willing to listen to to anyone giving you feedback on whatever issue you come across. Just being open minded uh, really puts you just ahead of everybody else. Like 9 times out of 10, people are just gonna put up a wall, and everybody does that. As soon as you show that you're actually listening to, not just being honest about yourself, but listening to what they're asking you to do in whatever situation you caught yourself in, um, you will stand out.
Hmm. Good, wise advice from the very group of people we're talking to, Gen Z. Well, you guys, we hope that this has been helpful for you. We're going to continue our conversation about professionalism because it's important. But remember, if you take anything away from this, great communication, be reliable, and then have a great attitude and be ready to deal with any problems that come up. All of these are signs of professionalism and will make the difference. We'll see you next time.